Welcome back. And now it's time to take a look at the main headlines of our Egyptian dailies. But first, allow me to welcome my guest for today, Mr. Mostafa Reda. He is a political and economic expert. First of all, good morning, sir. Let me start by taking a look at El Jumhuriya newspaper. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi on Thursday received a phone call from Russia's President Vladimir Putin, and the two leaders tackled ways of enhancing bilateral cooperation. They also discussed topics including the situation in Syria as well as Libya during their phone conversation. Meanwhile, the Egyptian presidency said in a statement that the Russian president said flights between Moscow and Cairo will resume soon. Sir, talking about this, away from, I don't want to talk about the Russian flights, talking about the whole situation, how do you see it? What is going on between Syria and Turkey from one side, between Russia and Turkey and Russia and Syria? How do you see the situation?
Well, let us start with the Syrian situation first. Certainly, this situation reached a very acute situation and a very acute position, and it's turning to be quite dangerous. So apparently all the players in the political scene realized that, and that's why we had the Aleppo evacuation, which took place since 2 or 3 days ago.
Yes.
And probably this is the first step in order to go to the peace process, and that all parties involved, they should have an agreement in order to solve this situation. However, still the major players are Russia and the United States. And I think if they're going to reach...
we can see Turkey now.
And Turkey, certainly, and Iran. But
Yes.
the major players are
in the front.
In the front, exactly. So if these, and I think they have the will and the power, if they have the will and the power to reach an agreement, the other parties who are going to follow the path. However, because it's escalating and it's causing probably a very, I like to say, a threat to probably the international community itself, you see, because it could be a source of terrorism. So they are finding a way to a solution to the Syrian situation. However, I'd like to add something very important, that certain parties are asking for the downfall of President Assad. I don't agree about that for one reason. Let's see what happened to the countries around us. You see what happened in Iraq when we took off Saddam Hussein, and when you took Gaddafi out of Libya. You see, all these, and in Yemen, you see, all these countries have collapsed, and they are still in chaos. So again, it should be the Syrian decision, the Syrian people's decision, either to elect President Bashar Assad or to remove him. It's not the international community. This call certainly will be a very important factor in the stabilization of Syria and the Middle East as well.
Right. Moving on to Al-Shuruq newspaper. Prime Minister Sharif Ismail said on Thursday that the cabinet exceeded strong efforts during the year of 2016 through the sincere cooperation among the state bodies. And the Premier said that the country is moving on the right track by achieving the reform in all fields and by reaching the world standards to put Egypt in a better status. Ismail added that the government is working in a number of projects in the field of energy and electricity, and it has implemented sewage networks and housing projects, as well as the reclamation of 1.5 million projects. How do you see this so far? Well, of course, we can see all the developments taking place, and especially talking about, we can see all what is taking place right now in the Egyptian arena, actually, and the projects, what we achieved when it comes to energy or electricity. Actually, this sector achieved a lot. So, yes. But still, of course, we have many challenges.
Exactly. However, probably the government is looking on a long-term perspective. And as you mentioned just now, electricity and energy projects, the Suez Canal project, the logistics project which takes place in the Suriq area. These are long-term projects, and the returns are not going to be evidence on the short run. They're going to be evidence on the long run. However, the point is, again, that a lot of probably citizens are complaining, and they have a point of view about the high prices of products and the inflation of products and services, which went up dramatically. However, there are certain low-income citizens, like pensions, people who get pensions, or people who get salaries, fixed salaries, not in the private sector, in the governmental sector, that are suffering dramatically from these price increases. However, there should be more control from the government through opening cooperative societies, providing these goods at a normal price or at a controlled price, in order to overcome the results from the economic reform measures that have been taken during the last months, you see, since 2 or 3 months ago.
Let's move on to Al-Ahram Online. Foreign Ministry said in a statement on Thursday that Cairo believes that the principles proposed by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry to revive the Middle East peace process are mostly consistent with the Egyptian vision. But it is important that those principles are implemented eventually. The ministry spokesman said that the vision proposed by Kerry would need to be fully studied and evaluated, revealing that the U.S. Secretary of State spoke with his Egyptian counterpart about some aspects of his vision in the recent months during his talks with major international and regional parties involved in the peace process. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry criticized the government of Benjamin Netanyahu, which he said was undermining the two-state solutions. How do you read this and why now?
Certainly, this statement, although it's a valid statement, but it comes too late, you see. Now, the administration,
even if this is going to be what they want to do, but so far we are going to start a new administration, actually.
Exactly. And again, I'd like to point out a very important point that the U.S. strategy is a fixed strategy. You see, the tactics change, but the strategy and the vision do not change by the change of the administration. So I don't think any change in the policy of the United States toward the Middle East and towards specifically Israel is going to be, we're going to see something, a major change. I'd like to refer again, if you remember when we had Obama, which came here to Cairo University, and all of us were very excited, and he said that he's going to take the side of the Arab states and the Muslims and all that. However, the reverse was true. You see, we saw a lot of actions which were contradictory and not consistent with what was mentioned when during his visit. So we should not be very optimistic about such statements like that. Number two, again, I don't think that the United States is change its policy against the security and the existence of Israel. And again, they are still asking, and Israel, certainly, we had a lot of decisions, you see, in this respect, from the United Nations, from the Security Council, and they were not respected by Israel. Again, they still insist.
And we have seen the declaration recently by Benjamin Netanyahu when he was talking about this.
Exactly. And they are, certainly, they will not allow the split of Jerusalem, the Israelis, and they consider that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel and is not going to be divided.
Right, moving on to Al-Ahram newspaper. The cabinet on Thursday approved during its meeting on the new investment law. The investment minister Dalia Khurshid noted during a press conference that the law is unanimously approved and reflected the consensus of the government and the society. The newly drafted investment law included incentives program to attract targeted investments by offering specific projects according to the state's priorities in supporting some industries, strategic activities and export industries. The draft law also includes extractions facilitation, especially the extraction of licenses, in addition to setting rules to settle overlapping jurisdiction, establishing a single window system, and promoting the availability of investment opportunity.
Well, that's a good step, you see, the first step for encouraging investments. However, you mentioned just now that something very important, which is the license and the permits, which really constitute an obstacle for any investor.
It's permits and exits.
Exactly.
When it comes to money, actually, in general, yes, or investment.
That's one thing. And again, the dealing with the one window for the investment law, probably, let's hope it's going to be like that, you see. But however, again, let us see how it's going to be applied, you know, because I have doubts, a lot of doubts with the performance of the government employees, which are still thinking on the classic mind. You see, they're not, they're working on a bureaucratic methodology.
But I think if we're talking about a new entity, talking about this one-stop window, I believe it's not going to be with a traditional employee. Definitely,
hopefully,
it's going to be,
that's very
for
important.
sure, it cannot be like this, actually, if you're
they
talking
have to appoint,
get rid of bureaucracy.
Yes, they have to appoint probably and train employees how to deal with these new challenges again. On the other side, let's see how it's going to be implemented. And then again, another factor which is very, very important, it's the, if you start a new project, certainly an industrial project, the problem of the infrastructure itself, the electricity and the sewage system and all that, that should be connected to the industry. Takes a long time, so let us hope that it should be a coordination between all ministers, not only, it's not only having this investment flow, there should be a coordination between all ministers in order to push and promote investments here in Egypt.
Right, moving back to Al-Ahram Online. The cabinet referred on Thursday the Egyptian-Saudi Red Sea border demarcation agreement to Parliament after approving the deal that places the Egyptian-controlled Red Sea islands of Tiran and Sanafir under Saudi sovereignty. The cabinet asserted in a statement that its approval of the deal and its referral to the Parliament is constitutional, though lawyers challenging the agreement in court say the move is unconstitutional, as the court has not yet given a final verdict on the issue. The cabinet has received several inquiries from Parliament asking why the agreement has not been sent to Parliament for approval.
Certainly, this is a quite important issue, and again, it should be reviewed. What I expect that they're going to do, that the cabinet send the law to the agreement actually to the Parliament. However, I assume that the Parliament is going to form a committee in order to evaluate and to see what is right and what is wrong. On the other side, there's a verdict that's going to be issued. We have to wait for the verdict from the court and see what's going to happen about it. So now the ball is in the court of the cabinet and in the court of the court, in the ball of the court, the Egyptian court, in order to take a decision about this verdict and see what be the outcomes again.
Right, Mr. Mostafa Reda, political and economic analyst, thank you very much for joining us. And still, we have more to bring you on our breakfast show. So let's move on to a quick break and we'll be back to resume our breakfast show.